Hello once again, and Tony here, and now the time has come in which I tell my top 25 favorite KaBlam episodes. And just like always, this is split into two parts. The first part being like entries 25 to 11, and then the second part being the final 10. And before I get on with this countdown, I'd like to mention a few things about KaBlam. First of all, well, like I kind of forgot to mention this in my review. This show makes a lot of references to pop culture and to a lot of music and to a lot of other references, and is also has a great sense of, and even a fun sense of, self-aware humor. Mostly they point to celebrities at the time, like Brandy Norwood as Moesha, or even the likes of Martina Hingis, who is a very well-known Swiss athlete, and various other Broadway musicals, and of course many other TV shows that air before them. Now, the reason why I gave this show only a 4.5 out of 5 is just mainly because, well, I have my reasons. First of all, it was mainly the removal of certain shows that I actually really loved. I do understand why Mo Williams's The Offbeats had to be removed in the second season, but it was pretty much a shame because I really loved that short, and it was one of my favorite shorts of all time, but it was also understandable. Mo Willems had to, go over to Cartoon Network and make and create the very underrated and nowadays kind of obscure Cartoon Network show Sheep in the Big City. And it was also quite sad that Sniz and Fondue ended up being taken off the air after its run in the later parts of season 3, but it was for a good reason because the animators basically had to do the TV version of Watership Down. So the constant dropping of certain animated shorts was actually kind of sad, especially with ones that may have potential, even though there were a couple of shorts or even some shorts that only appeared for one time that I didn't really care for. And I didn't really care for Angela Anaconda, especially when it was spun off to its own show. And there were some other shorts I didn't really care for, like Randall's, Big Top Circus. And well, looking back at the Shizigi, you could tell that the CGI was still a product of its time, so it was kind of like faulty animation. So there were moments in which there were some flaws encountered with the show in terms of its writing. Not to mention, it was also because of the basic characterization, which I didn't really mind, but I guess it's also because I'm pretty much a sucker for, characters that go through a character arc. But despite that, I'd have to say that, well, the simple characterization just feels more like a nitpick, but still, it deserves a really strong score. And with that out of the way, let's get on to the list. Or rather, this countdown. Starting off with entries 25 to 11. And at number 25, we have Money Train 2, in which the episode starts out sweet, in which Henry and June have a certain meet and greet with the fans, and then one loyal fan happens to be a convict who has a tattoo on his chest of both Henry and June. Then we proceed to Sniz and Fondue with the episode Solitaire Confinement. Fondue gets a new computer, and then Sniz wants to go on a fishing trip. But, well, Fondue is rather addicted to playing solitaire on the computer, and then, well, crap happens, everything gets stolen, and then Sniz comes to the rescue with a huge swordfish, and therefore totally eliminating Fondue's new computer. And then basically the episode ends pretty sweetly with Sniz and Fondue playing solitaire, with Sniz acting like the computer. And then after that, we see Henry and June back again, in which they talk about the hottest new musical, KaBlam the Musical, in which Henry mentions that Swiss athlete Martina Hingis has basically said something really positive about this, and then the main musical number starts and the earworm basically has come back to me. Oh boy, I have heard this song ever since I was about 8 years old, and I can't believe it. 15 years, or 15 to 14 years after I viewed this episode, and probably I've also viewed it for several times, so that kind of makes it like, including 12 years after viewing this episode, the earworm managed to come back to me. Well, which is pretty much no surprise because I've been actually exposed to the song for several times. Well, I have myself to blame, but still, that earworm with this song is just pretty much addicting, and, well, it probably may not end up escaping my head anytime soon. Then we get to Action League Now, in which an opal is stolen from a mummy, and then the mummy gets his revenge. June gets really pissed off because she can't stand antagonists. Henry explains the importance of having an antagonist in any type of medium, otherwise it's going to be boring. Loopy meets and greets a couple of aliens who basically communicate with burping. And then Larry, after drinking some soda, farted. And then, well, the aliens end up getting the hell out of planet Earth. And then, well, the episode ends with Larry learning his lesson. And then Loopy just still having a clothes pincher on her nose, saying "P.U.," which I thought was kind of funny. And then the episode ends with Henry and June with a sort of mystery page-turner segment in which they can't get the name of Benjamin Franklin's name right, even though he's given them hints. So overall, this episode was a pretty good episode, though it does have some things I kind of have issues with, especially the last segment. I've always wanted to shout at the screen, "Dudes, it's Benjamin Franklin! Get it over your heads!" And even with the gross out humor found in the Life with Loopy episode, I mean, I have no problem with gross out humor, but I didn't really expect it to manage to play out like that. But still, I guess what more can I expect in any Nickelodeon show? And, well, that was pretty much it. I mean, despite some of the hiccups that I've encountered in this episode, I still have to say that it was a lot of fun watching and revisiting. Number 24, we have More Happiness Than Allowed by Law, in which June celebrates her birthday. Henry tries to make it happier, but each time he keeps screwing up. And then everything ends with Henry, well, giving a mood ring to June, in which blue is like when she's happy, green is when she's okay, orange is when she's annoyed, and then red is when she gets really pissed off and knocks Henry on the wall, which I found very fun. And this also marks the debut of Jet Cat, which I kind of wish that it could have spun off to its own series as well, but okay, there's another, cartoon short that managed to spin off its own series that managed to star a female superheroine. So, yeah, My Life as a Teenage Robot basically beat Jet Cat to it. But still, I thought Jet Cat's debut episode was rather well done, and it kind of shows that Melanie doesn't want to be taken advantage of by Todd, who automatically recognized that, okay, Melanie is none other than Jet Cat all along. So overall, I thought it was a very fun episode that was really fun revisiting, even though poor Henry's, while trying to give June a really happy birthday, does feel rather annoying at times, but still, it was rather fun. Number 23 is You May Be a KaBlammer, in which a loud, boisterous, crass, obnoxious comedian by the name of Jimmy McGee shows up because June needs also someone funny in the show. And he basically has this catchphrase, "Auga, auga," and he basically proceeds to act like such an ass, especially towards Henry, and then Henry brings in his mother, and then his mom and Jimmy McGee have an epic showdown with each other. The biggest highlight with this episode definitely has to be the music video, Hockey with a Monkey, which is a very fun and very catchy song, and it's a very fun music video. I mean, the premise is rather silly, but simple, to say the least. You have a lot of the adults, like your mothers, your teachers, National Guards, and other police officers, other adult authority figures trying to find where the kids and where the monkey is. And what do you know? And where the monkey, where the kids and the monkey are. And then you find out, okay, the kids are playing hockey with this monkey. And let's just say that the chorus part is simply so addicting. It goes like this. It goes like 1, 2, 3. The kids are the monkey, and 4, 5, 6. Da 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 da. 7, 8, 9. Having a good time, yeah. And I thought that chorus part was just rather fun to listen to because it basically shows you that this monkey definitely has a lot of fun playing with these kids, and especially when the monkey closes out that yeah, I thought it was just really well done. I mean, this music video really ranks way up high with the Pizza Rocket music video, and that was a lot of fun as well. So overall, biggest highlight was definitely the music video, Hockey with the Monkey, which I probably might recommend all of you to listen to it, just to listen to how catchy the song is. Number 22, we have Great for Paper Training, in which we have June having this dog in which she christens Wolf, following her around, and she basically keeps it as a pet. Henry is rather unsure about it and kind of indifferent to it, until Wolf takes a liking to Henry, which kind of makes June jealous. And then we have the Action League Now episode in which Milkman's girlfriend, Andrea, wants him to be like his own superhero rather than have the Action League to help him out, because what more can you expect from Milkman? He's pretty much a very lame-ass hero. He's a lot lamer than the other superhero comrades that he has, but at least he can be funny. And then we have the Life with Loopy episode, Bull in a China Shop, which is pretty much the highlight for me and one that I really remember the most, in which Loopy ends up breaking her mom's precious vase, and then her dad starts crying. Her mom tells her that she's nothing but a bull in a china shop. She ends up getting intervention with the bull himself alongside some other misfortunates, like a young woman by the name of Raquel, who ends up being injured and looks totally wounded. And also the episode in which Race Rabbit has to retrieve the queen's tooth to a young boy who loses his teeth easily by the name of Tooth Boy, and it's a rather enjoyable episode. So overall, this episode, the biggest highlights for me were none other than the Action League Now episode with Milkman's now ex-girlfriend, the Race Rabbit episode in which Race Rabbit has to deliver the queen's tooth to Tooth Boy, and then the Life with Loopy episode, Bull in a China Shop. Number 21, we have KaBlam, James KaBlam, in which Henry and June have a college-aged intern by the name of Lyle to do a lot of the usual stuff in KaBlam, and basically they show him the ropes. And then we have the Sniz and Fondue episode in which Sniz, Fondue, Snuppa, and Bianca have to move out of their house because their house is infested with a lot of fleas. And basically, Sniz is pretty much the one responsible for that. And then, well, they move into a hotel only for some days. Sniz can't believe that he left his baggage back at home. And then, well, when their house is finally cleaned up, Sniz manages to get his baggage only to realize, oh goodness, there's still a lot of these pesky fleas that will end up eating the house, which is pretty much a bittersweet ending, but otherwise a very funny episode. And then the other highlight for me was none other than the Offbeats episode in which, well, the news is stating that someone will get conked in the head with some type of paraphernalia in the next few days or so. And then Tommy tries to avoid it, leaving his friends wondering what on earth is going on, why is he acting so differently, leading to August into making a robot clone of Tommy, only to get the short end of the stick. And then Tommy decides that, okay, the best thing that Tommy, Betty Ann, Rapunzel, and August and September can do is just all wear helmets so that they won't get affected by the constant raining of paraphernalia, which I thought was very fun, and it was just a very fun and well done episode. And then we have also the debut episode of Patchhead, which is mainly a live action show which also features elements of animation. The other highlight for me was definitely when Lyle made a lot of impersonations of the characters featured in KaBlam. And another highlight, like I said, is the episode Rockabye Big Baby. And let me just tell you that Harry Connick Jr. voicing Big Baby, for me, kind of felt creepy, but it was kind of cute listening to. Especially considering that you had a man in your 20s who basically voiced this Big Baby, and he has such iconic lines saying, "Too loud," or "Choo choo go boom," or "Baby mad." It was just funny. I kind of wish that he could have been used for the other episode that Big Baby appears in. And especially that Kiss appeared in this episode, albeit in doll form, was just another great highlight. So overall, this episode definitely has a lot of highlights going to it, especially for the Action League Now episode, Rockabye Big Baby, which was definitely made of win. At number 20, we have The Best of Both Worlds. Now, I'd like to admit something here. I did not really care for the 4th season of the show. I mean, there were a couple of episodes that I'm sure that you people know that are also on this list. But nonetheless, I'd say that at least it still manages to maintain Action League Now, Life with Loopy, and even some new shorts that came along. And the biggest highlight with this episode was seeing real-life Henry and June step into the real world after they've seen a couple of photographs saying, okay, this is basically what the real world looks like. This is what live action looks like. And they come into the real world only to realize that, okay, they try to get on their bikes, but they end up injuring themselves. And I thought it was really interesting seeing how Henry and June would look like in the real world. I mean, they have their trademark colored hairs, but when you look at them, they are pretty much still kids. I mean, which I found rather interesting and kind of surreal. And you also have the Life with Loopy episode in which Loopy and her family go to this SeaWorld-like theme park, only to realize that even if Larry wanted to see Charlie Chicken, it was basically canceled. And we found out that Charlie Chicken and his partner, his first name is Turkey, ended up being swallowed by a whale. So it's up to Larry and Loopy to get them out. And then the show basically ends with Charlie Chicken and the Turkey Tom having like a huge swell show with the audience. And it was just a lot of fun. And even this episode was a lot of fun as well because it was very interesting seeing how Henry and June might be in the real world. Oh, and the ending was also really funny, especially when the live-action pizza guy came to deliver pizza to Mr. Foot. I thought it was just hilarious. So overall, a very well done and hilarious episode, especially considering the fact that we get to see what Henry and June might look like in the live-action world. And then you have number 19. You'll love our selection, in which Henry and June basically sort of have a popularity struggling contest of who's more popular. And the biggest highlight for me was basically having Mr. Foot being a lot more popular and well-loved than Henry and June, scoring really high on the popularity ranks that he ends up having his own movie and having a lot of shots about him, and then Henry and June are just basically sulking about it. And even if they had a moment in the spotlight in the end, they end up being owned by Mr. Foot. So overall, this was definitely a really fun episode, seeing Mr. Foot in the spotlight and not just as some background character, which I think that's what the viewers really wanted as well. Seeing Mr. Foot have a sort of a leading role in this, Henry and June segment. it was just basically a lot of fun seeing Mr. Foot, especially with the homage to James Bond. And number 18, we have art plus science equals fun, which is the first episode of the second season, which is a lot of fun, and I definitely enjoyed it. And, well, we have the Action League Now episode in which a rival group by the name of the Danger Patrol come in and state that the Action League are not really competent heroes, and they almost get kicked out. Basically, June is kind of freaking out with this, and then you have the one-time short, which is Randall's Big Top, and it basically has Randall and Bravado trying to make it to the Big Top to have a really wonderful performance. But the biggest win for me was hearing June sing the I'm a KaBlammer song. It is another earworm that I'm proud to have in my head. And not to mention, Julia McIlwain's singing voice is rather gorgeous. To have someone to really have this quality of voice at only age 11 is just gorgeous. It's a very smooth sounding voice, and it's very sweet. And this song itself really is such a sweet song, and I definitely enjoyed it. So overall, biggest win was June's I'm a KaBlammer song. Really enjoyable to listen to, and it was just a lot of fun, and it's become another earworm for me when it comes to the show's music. And then number 17, you have Harold's glow-in-the-dark brand butter. And the biggest highlight for me was the ending, in which you see that June has made herself a sort of spokeswoman for this brand of butter. And when the lights ended up being turned off for some reason or the other, June ends up spreading Harold's glow-in-the-dark butter on a piece of white bread, and then she has this outfit stating that she's the official spokeswoman. Henry gets pissed, and then June says, okay, I'm sorry, and then all is well with the world with both of them, which is definitely funny when it came to this episode. So definitely when June was the temporary spokeswoman for this special type of butter in this episode, it was just definitely a huge highlight for me. Number 16, we have Sasquatch-ercise. Yet another episode that I actually really liked from season 4. It basically has Henry and June gaining a lot of weight, and it's basically because they're also at risk because they have this physical fitness type of test in which if they can't get physically fit, they're going to end up being fired from being hosts of KaBlam. So Henry has the help of Richard Simmons, and I have to say that Richard Simmons was really hilarious in this episode, and he was just a lot of fun to watch, especially in his first appearance in which he's floating on a cable saying, Henry, oh Henry, I'm your fitness angel. I almost thought he said Emily. I don't know, maybe it was just my ears playing tricks on me, or maybe it was just because I kind of didn't even get that ever since I was a kid. And then when he, scolds both Henry and June for using Mr. Foot as a sort of help or aid of assistance for them to do, chin-ups, he then proceeds to have this rant saying, you two should be ashamed of yourself. I basically sacrificed all my time to be like your trainer. And then he kicks Mr. Foot saying, and you, what type of example are you setting for the children? And then comes this chasing between Mr. Foot and Richard Simmons. And then another highlight for me is also the stop-motion cartoon Emmett Freedy, which only appeared once. And I kind of think it was also for a pretty good reason. I mean, I guess when I look back at it, it's kind of unmemorable. It probably would have had a lot of potential to be its own show, but as it is, it is kind of unmemorable, and it was interesting, and it was also made by the same people who made those stop-motion Amanda Show shorts. So even though the animation looked kind of faulty and kind of ugly as well when it came to the character designs. I still kind of think that despite its rather generic and rather simple premise, I still think it could have been a pretty good show. And then the episode ends with Henry and June getting their certificate, albeit for a different reason. And then Mr. Foot basically becomes Richard Simmons' new exercise buddy. So overall, this episode was just a lot of fun seeing Richard Simmons in. And then number 15, we have Going the Extra Mile, in which a hardcore fan by the name of Ryan steps into the set, and, well, June and Henry are rather horrified by it, and they can't really stand his presence. And this definitely kind of annoys Henry and June to the point where they have to have Mr. Foot drive a car in order to, like, take Ryan to someplace really far, far away. And not to mention, this episode has the debut of Dr. Worm, which I found to be a very sweet music video, and it's no surprise that this music video was performed by They Might Be Giants. So it's a definitely huge win when it came to this episode, and one that I enjoy so much to this very day. At number 14, we have Tails of Napkin and Keeps Tick Tockin. So basically a very fun episode, and the biggest highlight for me was seeing the episode where Larry encounters a beach bully, and he basically encounters a book stating that he can be, like, more muscular after Loopy tells the beach bully that Larry's gonna totally cream him, and then Larry then proceeds to use the exercise equipment, and then he becomes a lot more muscular, and his persona takes a 180. And then Svensson himself, and the biggest highlight for me in this episode, or in this short, is when Larry, well, tells his father, "Tell you what, Pops, I'll wrestle you for the remote," and I thought it was just a very funny line when he said it. And then poor Larry's and Loopy's dad managed to get the tar beaten out of him, so definitely a very fun moment, and definitely one of my favorite moments in this episode. Number 13, we have I Just Don't Get It. Another fun episode that I enjoyed, and one that I really look back with such fondness as well. As this episode, let me check, has the, let me see, I Just Don't Get It. Okay, here it is. It basically has a lot of memorable shorts as well, such as, oh yeah, one of my favorite ones. Yet another first offbeat short that I really loved, in which Tommy has a song stuck in his head, and it goes like this: la 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 la, la 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 la, skidoo-doo-doo-dee, skidoo-doo-doo-ba. And then he proceeds to try to sing the song, well, but it just ends up being an earworm from him. And the populars make fun of him until Tommy manages to nail it, and then that same song ended up being stuck with the populars' head, and then they end up singing the song. Rapunzel ends up singing the song, and then Tommy, Betty Ann, and August and September sing the song in a chorus style, and then they faint. And it's rather funny to see Betty Ann trying to solve Tommy's problem, and then you have August trying to solve his problem, and the most memorable line when Tommy thought that the populars were like some type of weird alien, he says, "You can't tease me." And then he yells, "You're just a space slug!" And I thought it was just the funniest moment of this short. And not to mention the Prometheus and Bob episode, in which Prometheus teaches Bob how to skate. It kind of fails miserably, as you could expect in a lot of Prometheus and Bob shorts. I thought it was just very well done and very funny. And then you have the Life with Loopy episode, in which Larry now has the privilege of watching late night TV. Loopy gets herself into a lot of hijinks, and then they basically have to pay the price by doing a lot of their father's household chores. So overall, this has a lot of wonderful moments in this episode, and ones that I keep watching to this very day, especially when it came to the Offbeats episode with Tommy's song being stuck in his head. I still laugh at this episode to this very day. And then number 12, we have Cramming cartoons since 1627. It's Parents' Day for Henry and June, and June's dad comes along, Henry's mom comes along, and this is also her first appearance. They get into fights with each other, they get into a lot of arguments, and it's pretty much, well, part of their thing. And let me see, some memorable shorts in this episode include, oh yes, the first episode of Brothers Tiki, in which they have a lot of these weird things to do in order to get home, and then you have the Prometheus and Bob episode with Prometheus trying to teach Bob how to take an egg out of its nest, and then the Life with Loopy episode Kung Fu Loopy, or Kung Fu Larry, I think, in which Larry ends up being very excited to see the Charlie Chicken show on ice, albeit with a kung fu twist, and I thought it was just a very fun moment. And not to mention the Life with Loopy episode, in which, well, Larry is enthusiastic to see the ice skating show with Charlie Chicken, was a huge highlight. So this pretty much is a huge highlight in this show. And then number 11, finally, we have What Astronauts Drink, in which this is a space theme episode, in which Henry and June explore the wonders of space, and then you have the Sniz and Fondue, and Action League Now, and Life with Loopy episodes, all involving with space, except Anemia and Iodine, which is basically involving with something gothic. So overall, this is definitely a fun episode, though I will say that Anemia and Iodine kind of felt out of place. I kind of wish that they could have placed Pizza Rocket in this episode instead of Anemia and Iodine, but other than that, it was a very fun episode to watch. Well, that's all for entries 25 to 11. Stay tuned for the final 10, and I'll see you later, everybody.